It's a shocking photo by any standard. It's a photo taken by the Hamilton Spectator of a Hamilton police officer with his knee on the neck of a young Black woman, Rowa Mohamed. Rowa had gone to the park when she heard that her neighbors who were living in an encampment had had a fire, and she wanted to make sure that they were being treated well. Rowa was arrested. She was taken into Hamilton Police Services custody, and she shares with us her story of what she went through during the arrest and what she went through while she was in custody, the humiliation she suffered. Her allegations are difficult and disturbing to hear. We also talked to Gachi Issa, who witnessed this and who tells us what young Black, Brown, Indigenous youth who are caring for people who are living in encampments and living in houselessness are dealing with, how they're being treated. And Gachi and Rowa tell us what we need to do to hold our elected officials to account. It's a really difficult conversation to have, but it's one that we need to have so that we can understand what we can do better, what we can all do as a society. Over to Rowa to tell her story.
I think that we spend a lot of time telling people how cruel and unreasonable and unfair and unjust the Hamilton Police Service is. And we were trying to tell people that, like, all throughout the year at every encampment teardown, because we saw them do violent things to people, to unhouse people, to people supporting them. And this was only like, it seemed like they were going to just escalate eventually and hurt people, because it seemed consistent with the way that they were acting during teardowns. I didn't think, however, that that would happen the day that there was a fire and a crisis in that community and people were suffering and people wanted support and needed support, and that there was neighbors ready and willing to support, and that they felt that we deserved violence. I was there to support my friends. That was my park that I went to. And it broke my heart that there are people living in this country in this weather right now, with no barriers between them and that. And so, like, we were there, we're linking arms. You can see the photos in the Spectator. We're linking arms, me and my friends, and just waiting for them to have some compassion and give people time, because we couldn't believe that that was what they were actually saying. Leave and stay outside in the cold. We're going to take everything you have and just freeze. Like, that's wrong. That's just wrong. And so I was there, I was standing. They started to push. I've said this before. They started to push. You can see as we're all like, our arms are just with us holding each other, and they're like aggressing towards us. I definitely was assaulted, put his hand in my face. And then the woman cop seen in that photo, right before she took me down, called me a bitch. And you can tell that there was no humanity in any of their faces or in any of their movements. They didn't care. They didn't see us as human, and they didn't see the people who lived at JC Beamer as human. And so, yeah, they grabbed me, they tackled me to the ground, and they felt the need to use that many officers to restrain me. And I'm not going to lie, I actually thought I was going to die like people die on the news, like Black people die on the news all the time. And I began to scream, because that shouldn't happen. That wasn't the series of events that should have unfolded that day. Community support is the only thing keeping people from dying, and we can't spend money hurting those people doing that support. And yeah, he hurt me, and my neck still hurts, and I'm in pain today, and it comes and goes because of the adrenaline, the shock, and the panic, the deep anxiety and worry. But I am in pain, and I don't think that's fair, that me or anybody else who was there that day gets roughed up or just trying to be there for their neighbors, which is what anyone would do if their neighbor's house burned down.
I don't understand the judgment behind doing that to you. So you're saying that the officer's knee was on your neck, and is that when you feared for your life? Was it during that? And how long did that go for you? How long did it
It
feel?
was from the moment that they grabbed me. Anytime, honestly, I see a uniformed police officer, I am afraid of my life. I know that existing as a Black Muslim woman in this world, I am at threat from the police at all times. Okay. That is just a fact of the world, and that's what people have been coming to understand over the past several years and finally hearing us on. I began to fear for my life standing there, even just holding hands with my neighbors. I was scared then, but I knew it was important that people don't die in the cold. So, and I was scared when they grabbed me. And that's why I was screaming. And I know that they intended me harm because one of them, I can't tell in the blur who, tried to cover my mouth to stop me from screaming and other people hearing me. I don't know what his intentions were for me, but the intentions of when you put your knee on a small woman's neck, you're intending to harm her. Okay. And anyone who's experienced any kind of violence or experienced any kind of domestic abuse or violence knows that that is how people die. Okay. Anyone who's experienced police brutality, anyone who watched George Floyd die last year knows that that's how people die. I didn't know how long it was going to be, but I could hardly scream that I couldn't breathe. Okay. I got it out once or twice, maybe. And I don't recount these things to traumatize anybody, but because I don't want them to lie or to misrepresent what happened that day, or to try and continue this practice with other people and say, hey, no, it's just a shoulder pin to subdue somebody. There is nothing ever that a citizen can do that can justify that amount of force from somebody that large holding a gun ever. That's not it. We were peaceful protesters, we were unarmed, and we were there to support our community. Having armed police in neighborhoods, period, is a danger to all of us.
So people saw the photo. I know when my kids saw it, they didn't need to think twice about the fact that it was wrong, just watching it. And I hope that a lot of people who saw that photo, I hope it has some value going forward, Rowa, to change police practice and to hold police to account. But I think there's more to your story that people need to understand. They look at that photo, they look at the situation. I think some media have positioned it as kind of like a clash or a battle, as opposed to what you're recounting, which is you were unarmed, you were there peacefully, your neighbors had just been through a fire, they might die in the cold, and you just wanted to be there to witness and to protect them in any way that you could peacefully. And you had a knee on your neck. The world has seen that. But I don't think what the world maybe knows about, unless they heard your press conference, is what happened once you were arrested. So you weren't, to my understanding, just brought to sort of like where you make a police report, where you're sitting down at a desk and they're taking down information. You were actually detained, is that correct? And you have a medical condition. I want to know how you were treated, Rowa, when you got inside the station where we don't have photos and we don't have video. What happened to you?
The important thing is that there is photo and video from inside the station because they record all of those things. And so somebody should ask for that. But from the minute they pushed me into the back of that cruiser, I was saying, I have low blood sugar, which I did right before I held hands with my neighbors. My friend walked me over to get literally just some packets of sugar to help my blood sugar. And I wasn't sure if my blood sugar was okay or not. I was also in shock. And he kept trying to explain to me, this is what you're being charged with. I was just like, and he's like, do you understand? And I'm like, no, I don't understand. Like, I'm having trouble understanding. Anyone who has diabetes or gets low blood sugar, like severe low blood sugar, will understand that. And it takes time for me to recover. So by the time later that they got me to a paramedic after I insisted, they found my blood sugar, like the sugar packets that I'd taken had brought it up. And then as soon as they took me in, they took most of my clothing. They took my hijab, all the under pieces I wear with it, the top piece, every layer of it, they took away and said I couldn't keep. And then when I reached for my insulin, they said to me, two of them, you don't have any rights here. You don't help yourself to anything. So I left my insulin.
Sorry, I said I wouldn't interrupt, but I just need to drill down on that. Forgive me. You said two officers of the Hamilton Police Services told you you didn't have any rights when you were asking for insulin for your diabetes inside Hamilton Police Headquarters. I just want to be clear.
Yes, the short one who took me in first, he's an older man, said, listen, you don't have any rights here. Okay, he already said that. And then after I finished stripping and they violated me, touched my body all over, I reached for my insulin as they were taking me to the cell. And I tried to pull my hood over to cover my hair. And she said to me, you don't have any rights here. You don't help yourself to anything. As I was reaching for my insulin, grabbed me by my shoulder and snatched me away from the counter where my insulin was. So I knew that I was outnumbered. I was afraid for my life the whole time. Not in a way that I'm like, oh, I'm so afraid, but genuinely in the way that we see this kind of violence happen and people not come out of police custody alive. And so they kept it from me the entire time. They asked me what time I needed to take my insulin. I said, I need food to take my insulin. They said, okay, so you don't eat it if you don't eat. I said, yeah, I understand that, but I need to eat. That's just how diabetes works. And any doctor can tell you that you need food and your insulin. And I don't know how long I was held there. At some point, I had to ask the second set of paramedics that I forced them to bring to me by hitting the cell door as they laughed outside that it didn't seem like an emergency. And I asked the paramedics what time it was, but they didn't give me any information. They didn't tell me what time it was. They refused me my insulin. The food they had available was ham and cheese sandwich. I just don't know the levels of humiliation that can be added to this day. Is like, you get your hijab ripped off, you get offered a ham and cheese sandwich, you get your insulin taken away. And then you just realize that like everything about the system is built to humiliate and dehumanize people. And that when they take me in there, that's what they're doing to me. And when they take unhoused people in there and people who call in for a wellness check or whatever is in there, that's what they're doing, dehumanizing them. There's nothing about that process that is like good for our community in any way or can be construed like that.
It may seem like a dumb question, but for people who maybe don't understand, why the humiliation with the ham and cheese sandwich for you?
I'm a Muslim. I know they're culturally incompetent. By doing that, those were their options. And then later on, after the paramedics were there and there were other people there who weren't officers, and they came back to check my blood sugar because they'd taken all my supplies from me. I couldn't test or anything. Then they were like, we can go buy you food. And it was the same officer with the thin blue line on his wrist. And I was scared. I'm not going to take food from him. That's scary. And so I said to her, listen, they're not culturally competent. They took my hijab. This is what they offered me. I really don't trust them and I'm scared. And so the paramedic went back to her car and got me some Dex tablets, which are glucose tablets to help keep me stabilized because I was seeing yellow dots. But they couldn't determine if that was from my blood sugar, from being like pulled around or whatever. So yeah, and then she had to ask permission to give those to me. And they took my mask back so I could sit there the entire time, all those hours without a mask.
And how did you use the washroom or facilities? Someone who's never been arrested or detained in any way, what is that like?
So I did speak about this in my press conference, and the point of that was to just highlight how humiliating it is to actually be in there. I had a onesie on. I didn't have a chance to cover my body or do anything like that. And so there's this threadbare blanket that they give you to cover yourself. And for me, I would cover my head and body, top half of my body, strip down halfway, and try to cover myself as much as possible as I went to the bathroom. Because I had to go to the bathroom because I was there for so long. And they're there watching the whole time from the front. And they're fine to do that, but they won't come if you hit the door and say, hey, I need a medic, please help. Can someone come back here? They wait 30 minutes or more to come back to you.
How long were you in there, Rowa?
I don't even remember, honestly, the time. By the time I got out, it was dark. It was like, I don't know if you have reference for what time it was, but I was honestly very out of it by the time we got out, but it was dark. And the entire day had passed, and I had been at JC Beamer since the morning when we heard about the fire.
So you are a neighbor who used to jog through that park, who had become friends with some of the people who were living there in the encampments, the unhoused, and you were concerned that there'd been a fire, and you went down there to make sure they were okay, and you were charged with what?
I was charged with assaulting a police officer.
And then you were treated the way you just detailed for us in Hamilton Police Services custody. So, Rowa, I'm gonna give you a break because I'm still processing everything that you told me, and it makes me sick. But I want to talk to another person who's here today, and we'll come back to you in a few minutes if that's okay, Rowa. I want to talk to Gachi Issa, who was witness to some of this, and Gachi, I know you've heard Rowa's story. Can you just tell me how, and our OShow viewers have met you before, can you tell me how you were involved with this, what you saw, and your thoughts on what we just heard?
Yeah, I came down just like everyone else to see my friends, to make sure that they were okay, because there was a fire and all of their belongings burned down. And that same day, even within hours, the police then had an opportunity to evict people, and we're evicting tents, the tents that didn't even burn down. People lost their entire belongings. So then I watched my friends and community members suffer. And then that same day, I watched 2 friends and family members get violently arrested. Rowa, they had a knee on her neck. They dragged my friends. They concussed someone. And like, to me, like, it is unbelievable that the media, that the police can even cite this as a clash. Because a clash means that they're equal parties. The police gets a $1 million budget with a surplus. They have a history of being violent towards Black people, towards houseless people in this community, towards community advocates, and they arrest Black and racialized youth who are giving food to people who live in encampments, who are doing the work that the city can never do, that police officers don't do, care work, genuine, true, loving care work, and they get violently arrested for doing so, for assault of a police officer that they did not do. What I saw that day was an egregious and violent and scary display of power by HPS. They were brutal, and they were brutal for days. And I watched my friends and my family get violently beat for bringing food, care, love, and attention to encampment residents. That's not right.
Gachi, you've been obviously advocating on issues around racism and around policing, and I've had you on the program before. And a lot of our viewers were really inspired by you, thinking that, you know, you're one of the future leaders of our community because of your passion. And at the time, I remember your optimism. I remember you having hope for the city. Has the events of the last few days changed that for you? I mean, how do you feel about this being Hamilton, where you live, where you have hope for a better future? I mean, how are you feeling? How are you feeling?
I think, like, we know as Black people, as people who've experienced houselessness in our lives, that police officers, that the city, that institutions don't care about us. I think like what was horrific and traumatizing for me was to experience people that I love get violently assaulted, be taken to places where I don't know where they are. Police officers told lawyers that they didn't need to give Rowa insulin because she didn't eat. Like they were toying with her life there. And I think like at the same time that this is happening, encampments across the city are getting violently torn down, even today, actually. You know, even right now, as we speak, encampments are being torn down. People are being evicted from their homes in the winter. And that's normal to us. You know, like I've always had faith in community. And I think like, I remember like, you know, seeing footage of Rowa saying, don't let this shake your resolve. It hasn't shaken my resolve. You know, like this, like, I know like as a community that we are, you know, the peaceful ones. We're not the aggressors. We're not the assaulters. You know, we're the ones giving care into our community. Because people at JC Beamer, on Strawn, on, you know, at Beasley, those are, you know, I see my family in them. You know, I see my friends in them. I see my kin in them. That is not, you know, this HPS is never going to shake my resolve. The city councilors will never shake my resolve and my conviction about this work. And I don't think it's shaken any of the people who have been arrested. But what is terrible is that each person that has been arrested is banned permanently from parks, from encampments. They're not even able to bring food over to their friends, to community that they've built. And so they are clearly trying to impact the work, and the work being care work, the work being peaceful care work. So I haven't lost any hope in us, in our community. But I'm deeply, deeply afraid of what HPS did to encampment residents this year and the years before, and also my friends, my family, my community members. It's a shame.
Is this an issue of systemic racism? I know in the promo for the show, I called it police brutality and systemic racism, and a whole lot of people thought that that was an overreach, because I think there was one person who was white who was pushed to the ground or something. Can you explain to people who don't get it that there is a different experience for people who look like you than there are for people who look like me in this city?
Yep. I think that police and the city will always criminalize people who do care work, who fill in the gaps. 5 out of the 6 people who are arrested are Black people specifically. There were white people who were held by police and let go. They were walked around. I watched them violently drag Black, like a young Black person on the ground by their wrist. Their wrist honestly has a possible fracture. I watched a Black trans youth get violently choked out and assaulted by police officers. Like young Black kids who are doing care work get assaulted. That is fucking racism to me, through and through. That is police brutality. And we're lucky that we had cameras. Imagine all of the people in this city, all of the encampment residents who've had to face this alone. And we hear them, you know, we've always believed them. And it sucks that like we have to get to this point, you know, where like violent, traumatic images and videos are being circulated for people to finally understand what's going on. Like, you know, that picture of Rowa, that's my sister, you know? Like that's extremely hard to like see. Like that video, I can't watch it. That's my family. That's young Black people being assaulted by police officers because they are Black, because they do care work. You know, like I don't have time to entertain people because this is very much a racist thing. This is a classist thing. Half of us have experienced houselessness as Black people. This is not far away from us. This is not voyeuristic. This is not volunteerism. This is our community. This is our truth. And like, I want the whole community to know, I want the city to know that, I want HPS to know that that's not right. And they haven't shaken our resolve. Like Rowa said, they haven't shaken our courage. And I'm extremely in awe of the people who have been arrested, their courage and telling their truth time and time again, for people to understand this, for people to believe what's happening, for them to relive their trauma. It breaks my heart. It was hard to watch, let alone experience. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that both of you are here willing to do this and talk about this again, I mean, we're not here to entertain the bullshit, right? We're here to understand the reality and to find solutions so that you don't have to watch your friends go through this, Gachi. And so, Rowa, nobody else has to be treated the way that you were treated and humiliated. I don't think that we're going to solve it here today, but we sure as hell have to try. So what do we do?
Those of us who can't go to parks and encampments, even if it's an encampment, not at a park, we can't go and continue to do this work. But there are so many of you out there who are able to do this work, who have the resources to do it, who have things to support with. Go to your own communities, go to your own community organizations, your mosques, your churches, your community groups, your neighborhood groups, and go check in on people in encampments. Make sure that they're okay, make sure that they're warm, make sure that people are making it through the best they can with the city giving them nothing. Check in on them, and if you see the police there, know that there needs to be a watchful eye. Stay and watch over them and ask them what they need. Build relationships with folks. Make sure that there isn't anybody in our society or in Hamilton that the city and the police can say, hey, we don't care about it. It's okay to throw those people away. Show them that you care and make sure that you go out there. It's breaking my heart that I can't go see folks right now.
It makes me crazy that you can't go. I mean, first of all, I'm blown away that you still want to, that everything that happened to you hasn't made you sort of deadened to this whole crap or just zoned out or just like, fuck it, I'm out. I mean, the fact that you are heartbroken that you can't go back and check in on people and help them, I don't know where that much compassion and empathy comes from, but I just want you to know that it blows me away, Rowa, because I think a lot of other people could just like check out and say, I can't do this anymore. I can't deal. So the fact that you're giving us the advice to go out and to check in, but when you mentioned the thing about the police officer, I think that's very gracious of you, because I saw Chief Bergen's response to this, the video that he was, publicly forced to put out, kind of to do damage control. And this is my lens, right, as public relations. And I thought the video was disgusting because it didn't address any of the things that were causing the community real concern, which was the knee on your neck and the arrest of a community leader like Sarah Jama on assault charges, really? Sitting in her wheelchair. I mean, we saw the photos. It's nuts. And his video did nothing other than to sort of position it as a necessary reaction by the police and, oh, we're happy to talk to community members. Thanks for educating us, blah, blah, blah bullshit. So, I mean, that's why I don't have the police on the program to talk about it, because we saw what they said about it. We saw Bergen's spin with a gun at his hip in his full uniform inside of an office. I thought it was just gross. So I think your advice is great, and I hope more of us take it and go and check on these people in the parks, because you can't anymore, which is nuts. But Gachi, before I go on a rant, what was your thought when you saw Bergen's video, when you saw how they positioned it? I mean, what do you think of the city leadership and the police leadership after this weekend?
This isn't a violent clash between people, because it is not an equal, I think, relationship that we have. We were peaceful there to support people, to support encampment residents. And I think that I want the community to know that don't let the police, don't let city Don't let the city councilors get away with this. Don't let them throw this under the rug. Don't let them say that it's just a bunch of rowdy kids who don't know what they're talking about. This is also your fight too. This is also your responsibility as a community member, as someone who shows empathy. This is an assault on all care work in the city. If people can't go to encampments to bring food and warm clothes and tents to people, where there are no shelter space available in this city, where the rent is astronomically high, if we are criminalizing that right now, we're in dangerous times. That is scary to me. And I think the community members should be scared too. This is not a violent clash between people. This is, a group of peaceful, mostly young Black people who are doing care work, who are criminalized, and like, to speak to that criminalization, like, we already have it rough in our lives. This can possibly impact the futures, like, of these young Black youth forever. It can impact their livelihoods. Is it okay to the community, that young Black people are being criminalized for bringing food? Ask yourself that. This is also your fight too. And I don't want you to let the city get away with this. I don't want you to let the city get away with the encampment evictions that they're doing to this day. That's not fair, and that's something that we should stand against.
As of the time of this taping on Tuesday afternoon, Gachi, have you heard from the mayor? I want to be fair here. Has there been any recognition of what happened this weekend, or do we just have the police chief's video that he put out whatever night that was?
To what I know, there is no response from the mayor. And I don't think that that's what we need right now. That we don't need a response. I don't need words on a piece of paper to acknowledge what happened. There needs to be serious work. The charges need to be dropped. The bail conditions need to be dropped. Encampment evictions need to stop. And the houseless community members should be supported holistically as humans, as our community members, as our neighbors. That's the ask. Any statement from any institution, from the city, from counselors, from HPS, there needs to be a tangible solution to this. We are tired of words, because it is not fair that we are on the street doing that work on the ground every day, day and night, and people can release statements. We are beyond statements at this point. We need action. We need mobilization. We need our community to show up for us and for our houseless community members.
And you need those charges dropped. I mean, the idea that this is going to further burden Black youth is sickening. Like, there's so many, they use a word in sports, unforced errors, right? When you keep making mistakes that are unprovoked, they're just your own mistakes. To me, the city is making so many mistakes on this, right from its policy around homelessness encampments, punishing the care workers, preventing you from going back and giving care when people are freezing in parks. I mean, it's crazy making to listen to. And then when you think about the fact that we're talking about Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I want to go to you, Rowa, because you mentioned in your press conference that your family's in Sudan, correct? And they have the opportunity now. They're going through a terrible time there. They're having opportunity now to see what's happening online, to see what happened to you this weekend in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. And if you could just tell us, like, what has their reaction been? How do they see this, so we can get some perspective here?
So it's really shocking because they're not expecting that. There's been an ongoing revolution in Sudan, and everyone should look into that. But there's ongoing fighting, and people out there are demanding for a civilian government. And so it's just been in turmoil. My mom's been over there. The rest of my family's been here, like my dad and my siblings. But there was an internet blackout, and once that lifted, my cousins and family members there, this had reached them long before I posted it. it had reached them and they had saw that. And even they knew and mentioned like, hey, didn't people on that end of the world just last year go out into the streets protesting after something like that happened to George Floyd? And my auntie was just like, y'all left here and we miss you every day and you're all the way across the ocean, but y'all are not free over there. And that broke my heart, because that sucks. That sucks for the Sudanese man who lost his tent too. His family's going through this turmoil over there in Sudan, and he can't find peace here either. And we're charged with assaulting a peace officer. Where's the peace? So yeah, people around the world are seeing this, and they see how unfair and how unjust this is. And people are going to be gathering at the Canadian Embassy in Sudan, because our people stick together and they heard about this and they see how unfair and how unjust this is.
So in the middle of a violent revolution in Sudan, they're going to be going to the Canadian Embassy because of how you were treated by Hamilton Police Service officers.
Yeah, because it's not right, and that's not what people leave home for. People leave home to find safety, and they should be able to find that safety. And when we don't find it, they need to show that, and they need to hold those folks to account. And it's that same thing that all Black lives matter here and in Sudan, and wherever we're being mistreated, we stand up for each other and we take care of each other.
Rowa, I'm so sorry that your family has to go through this and that people in Sudan are having to go to the Canadian Embassy because of this. I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed for our city. How do we hold them to account from your lens? What do we do? I understand you guys have given us steps on how to care and how to support. How do we hold to account?
I think that every community member should demand that all charges are dropped on the 6 protesters, that all bail conditions are dropped. So the fact that they can't visit parks or encampments, that is dropped. I want community members to also demand very strongly that there is an end to encampment evictions in Hamilton, whatever it takes, because our fight is not over. This is very much the beginning of our fight. And I want people to also show up, to understand, to listen to their community members. This fight should not be on Black people. We should have not gone to jail. My people, my family should have not been beat like that. This is our collective responsibility. And I want people to adhere to that.
Rowa, any last words you want to share with our audience here on the OShow? And Sarah is in the middle of all of this, as we know, and unable to join us so far, and I'll catch up with her, I'm sure, at some point. But anything you want to leave with us for people who are watching this and trying to process it?
I'm just going to leave them on the last words that Gachi said. I think that's the perfect way to end this.
Well, I hope that both of you are safe, first and foremost. And I hope you know that as people learn, they will come to see what you're going through, how unfair it is, how racist it is, how brutal it is, and start to hopefully make and demand the changes that you're crying out for and deserve. I mean, I'm just in 25 years of doing a weekly show here in Hamilton. I don't think I've ever said I'm ashamed to be from this city. I am ashamed that of what has happened to both of you and to your friends. And I'm ashamed of how we treat the people who are in the parks and the people who are in houselessness and in crisis all the time in our city. And we have to do something about it. Thank you both for everything that you're doing. And God, you got to be able to get back into parks. That's just so insane. Like it's fucked up. This whole situation is unnecessary and fucked up. And I thank you for your courage and for sharing it again here. And I hope you guys are okay. Thank you. I know this took a lot out of you, but I hope it's worth it to you both. Please be safe. Take care of yourselves, and thanks for doing the OShow.